I set my fork down when I saw four crooked words on a linen napkin: "Your steak was spit on today." And for all the storms I've ridden through in boardrooms and headlines, nothing ever landed like that note. Not because of the spit exactly, but because of the second line tucked under it like a fuse. Check the kitchen cameras now. I was sitting 3 feet from the swinging door at the mariner's table in Savannah hoodie and beat-up sneakers, no reservation, no entourage on purpose. Because when you want to see a system as it is, you don't walk in wearing the crown. You keep your head down and your ears open. You let people tell you who they are. The hostess looked me over like I was a scuff on a new shoe. The manager laughed a little too loud. With the suits, the room whispered money and tradition, while the bleach from the kitchen drifted out in small ghosts every time the door slapped back. You know what I mean. My name is Marcus Reed. Folks call me self-made. I call it survival with homework. I grew up outside Jackson, Mississippi, learned to tie a tie from a grainy phone video before my first pitch fixed neighbors' laptops for $20 to buy coding books built North Star equity on data, discipline, dignity. And 2 weeks before this night, an anonymous letter landed on my desk saying this restaurant tucked inside one of our subsidiaries was serving with bias and doing dirty in the back. I could have issued a statement about our values, could have dispatched legal and PR. But sometimes the only audit that counts is the one you do with your own eyes. My server that night was Tiana, 25, maybe eyes steady, voice soft. The kind of smile you wear like armor when the job takes more than it pays. And when I ordered the governor's cut, 42 ounces with a rosemary smoke dome and a glass of Caldwell Reserve 2007, she blinked once, not doubting me, just calculating risk in a place that writes its rules in pencil. Then she went to the POS, watched the screen flash red for manager approval, swiped her own ID to override. Yeah, that happened. And in that tiny move, I saw someone deciding to stand on the right side of the line before anyone knew a line was there. What she saw next is the kind of thing you wish were rumor chef Briggs leaning over my steak, with a look that said he'd done this before, the sous chef, letting out a small laugh. The flip of meat, like a trick nobody would call. And in that moment, Tiana reached for a clean linen, wrote quick, with a hand that had balanced too many plates, folded the truth, and slid it under my dish. When she set the dome down. "Enjoy, sir," she said, not looking at me because looking at me would have given away the plan. I didn't touch the knife, didn't lift the lid. I tucked the napkin into my hoodie and texted my chief of security on a phone. "Nobody notices, red flag at Mariners, pull off site, backups for back of house tonight. Cross-check rosters, quiet and fast." Then I stood and asked the manager, Victor Sutter, if we could talk, which is how we ended up in a small office that smelled like air freshener, losing a fight with old smoke. He started the speech they teach you when you think a gift card can fix rot. Guest experience presentation standards, our commitment to excellence, water over stones, and I cut in like cutting a rope. "I want to see your kitchen cameras right now." And he tried to blink the request into dust. "Those are for inventory. The system records in blocks. It sometimes loops if storage fills, unfortunately." And I said, "Pull the window from when the governor's cut was fired." And he unlocked a cabinet, connected a drive to a dusty monitor, scrolled, and there it was, a clean jump of 2 minutes, and change where the truth should have been. His hand hovered over the mouse, and I said, "That's enough." I texted again. "Local footage shows a surgical cut tag, Sutter preserve everything, interviews first thing." Told him to clock out and call a lawyer. Then drove to the hotel without music, because I wanted to hear my own thinking. Waited for my team to pull the cloud backups that never touched local hands. Watched alone with a glass of water, sweating on the table. And it was all there, Briggs leaning in with intent, the little smirk, the sous chef's nod, the audio thin but clear enough to catch poison. That's what he gets for acting like he belongs here. And 3 nights earlier, a couple tucked in a dark corner waiting while their food died under a heat lamp, a steak hitting the floor, and coming back with a rinse and a lie. And if you want to know whether a problem is a person or a policy, you watch the pattern was neon. I encrypted the files to 2 servers, sent one to legal and one to PR with a single line. Internal review and now compliance training. Now no external statement until I say. Then I set the napkin on the nightstand and stared out at a pretty city that doesn't always admit what it holds. Here's the twist you came for, and it didn't happen on the steps, with microphones, like in a movie. It happened at the back door the next morning, when Tiana walked into the office like she was ready to run. If a shoe dropped, and I told her you did the right thing, and she asked, am I fired, not because she didn't already know which way these stories bend, but because habit is heavy, and I said, not by me, then I said the sentence that changes rooms. I own this place, the building, the brand, the payroll. It all rolls up to me. And I watched fear and relief argue in her shoulders, and I told her I saw what she saw last night and last week, and I laid out 2 roads. You can walk away, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. Scholarship, if you want to finish school, a job at another property, a reference that opens doors. Or you can stay and help me rebuild from the inside as Director of Culture and Compliance Policy, to people to purpose. And she asked if I really trusted her to do that. And I said I already did last night. You just didn't know it yet. By lunchtime, 2 unmarked SUVs rolled up, not TV drama state health investigators, with a city officer who had read the file straight through the dining room to the kitchen, no shouting. Briggs didn't make the alley, the sous chef followed. Sutter stepped toward the back door and stopped because the back door stopped him. 3 men who thought this room belonged to them walked out the front like everyone else, and I stepped onto the stairs where cameras had gathered and said what needed saying, without a melody. Yesterday, I came in as a customer. Today, I stand here as the owner. What I saw in that kitchen does not reflect the values of North Star or this city. This is not a bad apple, this is a rotten tree, and we are cutting it down. Then I lifted a hand toward Tiana, navy blouse, chin steady. This woman showed more integrity in one night than most executives manage in a career. She is the reason you are hearing this, and the applause that followed didn't sound polite. It sounded like people remembering their spine. Rebuilding is messy, pretty on slides, heavy in real life. We closed to the public and kept the lights on, gutted the kitchen like scrubbing. Memory took down the neutral nautical art and replaced it with framed photos of Black pioneers from around Savannah. Cooks, boatwrights, teachers, artists, whose names never made it to brass but built the room we were standing in. Rewrote uniforms to mean something, posted a code in the employee entrance in plain words. Silence is never neutral, and Tiana moved into an office with a window that used to belong to Sutter. Built an anonymous reporting system that worked scheduled bias training and tracked completion so it didn't die in a memo set. Weekly feedback circles where a dishwasher could pressure test a manager without paying for it. Pushed hiring to look like the community we serve instead of a club. You have to know someone to enter, and she enrolled to finish law school. At night, we pay for it. I don't know whether she'll end up in a courtroom or running a company. I just know she's already practicing justice. When we reopened, we didn't throw a party. We let bread and heat and honest greetings talk. An older couple sat in the center like they'd been saving stories for the soup. A crew from the port laughed like Tide, a traveling family, surrendered to a toddler's bedtime mid-dessert. And I watched Tiana move through the room, not like someone trying to vanish, but like someone who belonged and knew it. Before close, I handed her the napkin in a simple frame. "Where do we hang it?" she asked HR. I said right by the offer letters and the benefits sheet, so nobody forgets where the new beginning started. I wish the credits rolled there, bad guys out. Good people in harmony forever. But life doesn't respect tidy endings, some folks said. We went too far. Why stain a whole house for the sins of a few? Some said we wanted headlines. Some said nothing at all. And the quiet said plenty. Others walked in for the first time and looked around. Like the air had more room in it, a couple employees who used to swallow their words knocked on Tiana's door and told the rest of the story, and change kept stacking small on small until weight became direction. If you need the 3 acts, here they are. A napkin that sounded like a siren, a cut in a video file, and a decision to stand on the side of truth when nobody was watching, a room that now runs on names said out loud, and doors that swing for everyone. And the ending is yours to argue. Do you cut down a tree for a few rotten branches, or do you admit the rot runs the trunk and swing hard? Do you cancel or do you rebuild? Do you forgive or do you finally measure what people lived through? You know what I mean? If this moved you, angry, relieved, conflicted, say so. Drop your take in the comments. Tell me what you've seen and swallowed. Tell me what you would have done at each fork. Arrests rebuild public truth. And if you want more real stories told the way they actually happen, hit like so. The algorithm knows right and wrong still matter. Share it with somebody who thinks integrity is old-fashioned. Subscribe so we can keep pulling the linen back together. Because sometimes the room changes, not with a speech or a perfect plan. Sometimes it changes when one person writes the truth on a napkin and another person chooses to read it out loud.